robotic surgeons, bionic limbs and intelligent mannequins, machines of the future are shaping the medicine of today.
These sensors allow us to simulate a humanoid.
Reaching new heights in high-tech health. In the United States, a paralyzed woman manipulates a prosthetic arm using only her mind.
Highlights of the study are watching Jan feed herself and having this beautiful fluid control of a robotic arm through thought.
With an aging population and fewer doctors, will robots come to the rescue? Should we brace ourselves for a world where healthcare is completely automated?
The
robot is a tool to be used between a patient and a doctor, but it will never replace a surgeon or a doctor.
This exhibition at Paris's Museum of Arts et Métiers traces decades of research into robots, leading us here, the domain of high-tech limbs. Bruno has agreed to meet me. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Now, I understand you're wearing something known as Michelangelo. It's the latest generation in prosthetic limbs. For you, why has it been so remarkable?
I can easily open a jar of jam. My wrist is flexible. And I don't need to move my elbow anymore. I can also take a book and walk around while reading.
It was possible before?
Before, I had to put it on a table to be able to turn the pages.
Thank you very much. If all this seems remarkable, which it certainly is, then take a look at this next story. In the United States, researchers have helped to teach a quadriplegic woman how to use a robotic arm using only her thoughts. What did she do? Well, what many of us would do, she fed herself a piece of chocolate.
This was the moment Jan Schuurman fed herself a chocolate bar for the first time in a decade. 17 years ago, age 36, Jan was married with 2 children, running her own party planning company in California.
I was a very healthy person, and one day I was walking a lot that evening. It felt like my legs were dragging behind me.
Within 2 years, Jan's muscles were so weak she had to use a wheelchair. The family returned home to Pittsburgh, where Jan was diagnosed with spinocerebellar degeneration, an untreatable condition where the connections between the brain and muscles erode.
I can move my neck and my head, and that's about it.
Jan, now 53, needs full-time care. In 2011, a friend of Jan's showed her a video about a quadriplegic man taking part in trials with a robotic arm at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. Jan decided to volunteer. In the brain-computer interface, or BCI trials, electrodes would be plugged into Jan's brain. These would transmit messages from her neurons via a computer in order to move a robotic arm in 7 directions using just her thoughts.
These are electrodes, and they're literally injected into the surface of the brain. We place one in the areas that were activated when she was imagining using her hand. The second one in the area when she imagined using her shoulder.
2 days later, the first step. The electrodes in Jan's brain were plugged into a computer. She was asked to think about waving her hand. All eyes were on the computer screen to see if it could detect her thoughts.
Okay, now go ahead and try moving your wrist.
It did.
There you go. There we go.
Then came the robotic arm, which Jan named Hector. The team started with simple up and down movements, but within months they added wrist rotations and grasp movements. She even started to feed herself.
You watch Jan smile after completing a task, and you think, wow, we just have to take the next steps where we can make this a clinical tool, not a research one.
Jan's trial lasts a few more months, then the electrodes will be removed from her skull. Researchers believe in the future these could be fully implanted and attached to a wireless device for use at home.
I know some people will watch this and say, you know what, I could do that. I can make a difference for people in the future.
A future that, for the first time in years, Jan can grasp in her hand, thanks to Hector.
Back in France, meet one of the more unusual staff members at the Polyclinique de Colancy. He's only 1 metre high, but Jazz, as he's fondly known, is part of the team here. Thanks to virtual reality technology, doctors can communicate with their patients through Jazz.
Bonjour, Monsieur Lebeg. Voilà.
I've come to check if your urine is clear. I'm now going to lower my head to check the colour. Okay, it's perfect. Your urine is perfectly clear. Jazz is my assistant. Jazz is a tool. Jazz is an instrument. Jazz cannot replace me because he's not autonomous. He doesn't make any decisions.
Jazz isn't the only one of its kind working in a hospital setting. In Strasbourg, in the east of France, another type of robot is playing the role of surgeon. Real-life doctors aren't too far away. They're guiding its every movement via remote control.
It looks like an arcade game, but it's a lot more serious than that. In this operating room of IHU Strasbourg, the city's teaching hospital, this robot seems to be operating all by itself. But actual surgeons are making it move from a distance, thanks to a system of cameras. The robot's gestures are more precise, stable, and less invasive than the human hands. And experienced surgeons can operate while teaching others their new moves.
At first, we can show another surgeon the right gestures. The trainee is as connected as we are to the robot. They too see things in 3D. Like at driving school, we hand over the controls of the car without having to get out of the driver's seat. Of course, we can always take over whenever it's needed.
Only a small number of hospitals in the world have this robotic surgical system. The University Hospital in Strasbourg has been able to invest heavily in hybrid machines that use digital imagery, thanks to partnerships with companies such as Siemens.
The government has given us more than 70 million euros in funding, but more than 120 million were provided by industrial partners. It's a great example of private and public partnership. In organizations like this teaching hospital, we can no longer keep up with technology if we don't have partnerships with industrial and technology companies.
The hospital is also a research center. Established a few weeks ago, this operating room tests out the newest imagery technology. The patients aren't human, they're animals. And the scanners, MRIs, and X-rays are prototypes that could one day become widely used. Thanks to these groundbreaking projects, this Strasbourg hospital hopes to hire some 2,000 professionals by 2020.
Il reste 1 minute et 30 secondes de massage cardiaque.
Arms straight, 100 compressions per minute, 5 centimetres deep. That's what I've just learned at this first aid training course at the Red Cross. And if I forget something in a couple of months, I can always turn to this application designed as a refresher course. Digital technology is changing the way we teach and learn, not only for the general public, but for the pillars of our health system, the doctors of tomorrow.
Hurry, hurry, I think this man has had a heart attack.
Immediately, the students switch to emergency mode. They have several minutes to save the patient. In reality, a dummy, equipped with high-tech sensors and a price tag of 100,000 euros. Its every symptom and response is controlled by Professor Mignon.
These sensors allow us to simulate a humanoid, so it has functions such as respiration, speech, a pulse, internal body sounds, convulsions, exactly like a normal patient. And it allows us to monitor everything the students do.
Each day in France, 9 serious but avoidable accidents take place in clinics and hospitals. Most of these future doctors have never seen a heart attack. This simulation is the closest they'll come before living the experience for real.
The dummy tells us if he's in pain. We can communicate with him. It helps us to have good reflexes, or at least develop them for emergency situations.
France is 5 to 10 years behind the United States in embracing this type of simulation, but is leading the way in another known as serious games. In this 3D simulation, the patient too has suffered a heart attack, but this time it's virtual. Again, the soon-to-be doctors are left to make decisions, and the computer responds accordingly.
We're going to help him sit up and tell him to breathe.
This particular game won't be released for another 2 months, so its details are highly secretive. But the eventual goal is to create a whole virtual hospital where students can practice until perfect.
We're going to put all the staff who work in a hospital in these environments to allow them to train and to avoid doing it for the first time with a real patient. We want to always offer them a simulation, either physical or virtual, so they can perform at their peak and be ready to take responsibility for you tomorrow.
This agency is behind the 3D technology that makes these games so lifelike. The program costs around €250,000 to create. The most recent one was financed by the third largest pharmaceutical laboratory in the world. These simulations already exist in other industries, considered just as risky as medicine.
It's something that is already being used, for example, in the aeronautic industry, where we realized it's precarious and very dangerous to put a pilot in charge of a plane for the first time with passengers on board. It's the same case for doctors.
And why stop with doctors? Patients too can benefit from these 3D interactive experiences. Another serious game known as Born to be Alive has been designed for women preparing to give birth.
And here you're going into the labor suite. This suite that you see here in 3D has been modeled on the same one you'll have at the hospital. Here you'll be able to explore and experiment.
For now, there remain certain experiences these interactive games still can't simulate, such as the physical sensation and emotion that also comes with giving birth.
So where to from here for high-tech health? We leave you with a glimpse of one of the smallest displays at this exhibition. It's not even 3 centimetres long, but this micro-robot could revolutionise the way we perform certain surgeries. The idea is to swallow the robot, which can then perform an operation inside the body before being ejected via natural means. Not yet used in practice, these mini robotic surgeons are the face of the least invasive surgery of the future. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Thanks for joining us here on France 24. We'll see you next time.